I had just wanted documented that I abstained from signing the warrant since there was a reimbursement on that warrant for an employee reimbursement for my wife. So if we could please add that to the minutes. Any other corrections or questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Good evening, Mrs. Gogan.
Good evening, everyone. How is everyone tonight?
We're good so far.
All right. I have a lengthy report. I would like to just give you a brief update from our tri-committee meeting last night. School committee members, Mr. Shenevert and Mrs. Naparata joined us, and we met with the tri-committee. The select board did make a public recommendation that I would bring forward to you, that the school committee consider a 3% budget, and that if additional funds were to come in, the first $40,000 would be allocated to the schools to increase our allocation to 3.2%. And then from there, if there was any other Chapter 70 money, they are proposing a 70-30 split. So I'm passing along their message. I believe we had a good meeting last night. We met with the tri-committee, and then we met with the finance committee and went over our budget. I am so pleased about how our MAFRE partnership is continually growing. Last week, 121 prom dresses were donated to our students at Bartlett High School. Probably 14 or 15 members of their employee donation committee came and dropped off 3 very large boxes, very organized in sizes. Right now, they're all set up in a room right off the cafeteria, and tomorrow students can come and pick a dress. We're very grateful for that. I do want to let you know that we have locked up the In Control program, which will be coming to Bartlett High School April 29th through May 6th. MAFRE has a program, it's an educational program for all students to sort of fill out a survey about driving, bring that survey home, talk to their parents about safety. There will be a raffle. They can win the In Control driving program. It's above and beyond just regular driver's ed. And apparently it's a very expensive program, and they're looking to actually do it here on site in our parking lot, so students wouldn't have to travel to do it. And they're also looking at other raffles. They will be bringing a crashed car and placing that outside of our, by our sign for everyone to see. In conjunction with that, the Principal Cushing has arranged with the district attorney's office to have a texting and driving the same week before prom, so we're trying to beef up our education about being safe. I have also shared with you that through Foundation MAFRE, they have bridged a partnership with Johns Hopkins with us, their research center, and we are in the midst of, or they are in the midst of putting together a voluntary survey for teachers. Originally, we thought it was going to be teachers K to 12, but this study is really focused on education up until age 14, so a voluntary survey will be going out to our K to 8 teachers, and part of this is they've also requested to do phone interviews with our principals, our nurses, and our health teachers. Again, it's voluntary, and some people have volunteered for this, and some people haven't. And the data collection will be used to enhance our educational understanding of what's going on with how we're educating students, but also for Foundation MAFRE and Johns Hopkins. So we feel privileged to be a part of that. Last week, we held a meeting with Central Mass Department of Mental Health. Carly Sebastian, who is the Child and Adolescent Services Director, had reached out to me. She's looking to partner with schools to help support mental health issues. I invited all of our counselors. Many of them came, and some of the principals were able to come. to talk about how we can support students with emerging mental health issues and how we can support families with some outside resources. They had a number of resources. Our counselors now have a direct line to Carly, Sebastian. We are brainstorming different ways to get them into our schools to help our families, and I'm excited about that. As you know, we have received some correspondence to the school committee with intent to bargain regarding health insurance from the WEA, paraprofessionals, and the administrative assistants. I would also like to tell you that we've been doing, I think, a great job with planning for our first ever community safety fair. It's coming up on May 18th. We're looking at doing some good PR around that. We're going to be having a safety fair here on this campus, 11 to 2. The agencies that are involved in this keep expanding. We have the police, the fire department, EMS, MAFRE, Boston Children's Hospital, the district attorney's office, Department of Mental Health, North Village, AA Transportation, South County Community Partnership, Head Start. We're reaching out to the town library. We do have a commitment from the rec department in town, UMass, Harrington Hospital, and many of our Webster School leaders, and hopefully some students will be able to join us as well. So there'll be more information coming forward on that. I have a number of other updates that I'd like to give you. We had another CPM math training here on Saturday. I want to give a shout out to Curriculum Director Jill Chapdelaine for her ongoing efforts. That was session 7 of 8 Saturdays for the high school teachers. And at this last session, some middle school teachers joined, and the vertical conversation is beginning. We're hoping and working towards trying to offer Algebra 1 at the Webster Middle School, and I want to give a shout out to our teachers and Jill for their hard work in that area. I do want to let you know that last Monday I held a district-wide leadership team meeting with all of our principals, directors, assistant principals, and to discuss some of the WEA concerns that have been brought forward to me regarding safety and things that are going on in the building. Last Tuesday, I held the first ever Superintendent's Educators Council. I have 8 teachers that have volunteered for that, and we had a wonderful session of talking about things that are going on, concerns, but also talking about how to solve problems together collaboratively. We are meeting again on the week we come back from vacation. Last Wednesday, we had paraprofessional negotiations, and I'm pleased to say those are going very well. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to attend part of the Bartlett High School community meeting. Finally, not finally, I shouldn't say finally, it is a long report, I'm sorry. I do want you to know that as a result of some of the information that is coming my way, direct from teachers and staff, and there are some concerns regarding safety in our schools, in particular at the Webster Middle School and the Bartlett High School. So I have taken the liberty to do some restructuring because I do believe it's needed. So beginning on Thursday of this week, we will be moving Gina Nieves as the interim dean for between now and the rest of the year over at the high school. We have Barry Berthium filling in for Gina between now and the rest of the year in the Quest program. He actually knows the students in that program. And we will be asking the long-term dean that we have hired to stay at the middle school. Having said that, the position for the dean at the middle school has been posted. Mr. Zajac has been tasked with forming a committee and getting on that right now so that we could potentially lock up a permanent person as soon as possible. There have been some clearer directions coming from the superintendent's office. on roles and responsibilities, in particular at the high school. So we will be, central office and myself, be working more collaboratively with the high school to address some of the concerns that have come my way. I had the great opportunity last Friday, and Mrs. Naparata was there as well, along with Monique, to attend the first ever Park Avenue MCAS pep rally. It was just wonderful. The students from the high school, the drama students, the choir, the band, the cheerleaders, the basketball players, who am I forgetting? All came over and held a pep rally. The third and fourth grade students came running and rushing down in between all the cheerleaders as they were famous. The band was playing music. There was a skit put on by the drama club, and the kids were dressed up as the Scooby-Doo kids, and they did a whole full skit. The basketball players wowed the kids with their slam dunk contest. There was cheering from the adults and the children. The students were able to share some of their test-taking strategies. The whole idea was to de-escalate any anxiety, celebrate what you know, and try your best on this test. I want to give kudos to Mrs. Parmley and her team and all of the staff at the high school for bringing the kids over and arranging that in such a last-minute way. It was really a great Webster Pride Day. I already told you about paraprofessional negotiations, and I will let you know that it is MCAS season and at the elementary and the middle school. I do want to also let you know that recently the Commissioner of Education came out, and one of the questions for grade 10 was discarded. I'm not sure if you saw that in the news or not. The essay question was deemed inappropriate and insensitive. Students were asked to write a journal entry from the perspective of a white woman who uses derogatory language towards a runaway slave, and she's conflicted about helping her. So the Commissioner of Education has thrown that question out, will not count. We are entering a very busy season. The end of the year is... Yes, I know. I know.
That meant you had to exit one.
Yeah.
I think that's what she's...
Wait a minute.
It's been a busy year, but we've gotten a lot of good things done. Kindergarten screening is tomorrow night at 6:30. On Thursday night, the Webster Middle School has a science fair. And on Thursday night, the Bartlett High School has a lip sync contest. I do want to let you know that I've been invited to speak at the Literacy Volunteer Recognition on Thursday night to recognize literacy volunteers. I feel privileged to be invited, and I will be going to that before I make the rounds at the schools. I also would like to let you know that there is a spring convening dropout prevention workshop that I have asked Mrs. Zernicki to pull together a team that I would like to go with that team to sort of look at some of our tiered interventions to increase our graduation rate. And we did reduce our dropout rate significantly this year, so we want to continue that good work. And I also want to let you know that April 30th is the Webster Middle School Math Night. May 7th is the Super Team, so save the date. And May 13th is our town meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, continuing on with the agenda, the next item on the agenda is the business manager report. Good evening, Mrs. Perangeli.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. First item on my agenda is the third quarter update. You should have in your packets a copy of the budget. It was uploaded to the Dropbox on Monday. Sorry for the late drop-in on that. But as you can see, for our biweekly pays, we are at 58%, and our weekly pays, we are at 77%. Overall, with the spending freeze that we've had since January, I'm feeling okay about the budget. I think it's really helped. As we go through, you'll see some of the costs that are impacting our major areas of our budget. the highlights or the biggest things that we'll see throughout are prominently substitute costs and tuition costs, special ed tuition costs. I'm not going to go through a line by line, but I highlighted some deficit areas for you in the budget. Our phone account at the elementary is entering into a deficit, so I need to take a look at that. You'll see at the middle school on page 6, we have some sub-accounts that are in the minus. Those are maternity leaves and somebody else filling in, and we've had long-term subs. If you look at page 7, where you see a deficit for Dean, this was 100% in the budget at the high school, so the transfer needed to be done in the journal to offset the 60-40% that hadn't been done at the time when the budget was created. So overall, we're not too bad there. We're in pretty good shape, holding our own at the middle school. If you go to page 12 at the high school, you'll start to see again, we have tutors in the deficit over at the high school. That is kids that are either home on medical or suspended that need home tutoring, that are regular education. Again, you go through, you'll notice on page 14, we have a rather large deficit there, and sped subs. We have a long-term sub in that position. Again, you'll just notice it's a kind of a pattern at the schools, at the sub levels, that most of those counts are in the deficit. We know that's an area that we are looking at closely. We knew we had a phone deficit in the high school. That is because when we switched to our new phone system, that was after the budget was done. So that new allocation wasn't represented in the budget. One of the major areas of concern, which is why we had the spending freeze, is on page 18. I believe last time I was here, we were at, I think the budget was maybe 189, and I was concerned it was going up as a deficit. We are now at a $213,000 deficit in special education tuition. That does not include the special ed services that you'll see has a balance of $4,784. I expect that to potentially have about a $60,000 deficit there, with some new services that are being provided and some out-of-district contracted services that we have going on there. So that's going to increase that. I'm expecting that line to be in a deficit. And then if you continue on, you'll notice on page 20, our legal services are in a deficit. We've had a pretty busy season this year. We've had all our negotiations this year, which we've been using our attorney. We've had some personnel issues that we've used our attorney. So, you know, I'm hopeful next year that we won't see the impact that we have this year in this line item. And then at the district office again, the phone. So that's all being combined into next year. Again, that was part of the conversion for that. I am starting to work at end-of-year projections. I've been running payroll projections and taking a look, and right now I think we're okay. On our end, an area of concern for me is transportation. I took a look at the impact of the foster transportation just for this year, and we have spent $89,000 in foster transportation alone this year. So that's the reason why we're seeing a big impact in our transportation budget. So I've already had discussions with the town accountant and Doug, telling them that this is an area that we're going to have to look closely at towards the end of the year to see what we're going to do, because I am expecting a deficit there in that line item. Are there any questions on the budget? Do you have any areas of concern?
What would you expect us to be at the end of the third quarter from a percentage standpoint total? I know what we're at.
Huh?
What would you hope that we were at this point?
At the end of the third quarter, right now, we're overall at 68. I think we would have been around 55.
So that's a pretty big, because that number jumped out to
It's the
me.
special ed number that's really impacting us
Right.
a lot. we know it, we've been keeping an eye on it. That's the reason why we put the
Froze the
spending freeze
budget.
in place.
Mhm.
You know, I think we're gonna be okay. The spending, if we didn't do the spending freeze, we'd be in trouble. But we have all of our, I've double-checked with special ed. To my knowledge, there's no outliers. There's nothing that I'm not aware of out there, so as long as that continues, I think we're gonna be okay. So it's something that I'm monitoring closely, and I'm, just this past week, I've started running projections and really trying to get a much deeper dive into the budget, a much closer look at what we can anticipate for the end of the year.
And that 584 circuit breaker number, is that what you had planned to spend, or is that the
That's the
current
budgeted
budget?
amount. That's
That,
the budgeted amount, and that was my goal.
what's the balance? Do you happen to recall?
I do, in one of my books, I do, because I was looking at that also, whether or not I grabbed it.
I might have it.
Just had it, it could be on my desk. But we had, I want to say, 300,000, 320 something that we carried over from last year that we need to spend first, and then the remainder was going to come out of this year to carry over. So I think we were anticipating at the end of next year, if I remember FY '20, if we were to increase and not, if we were to use additional circuit breaker, if we didn't have any leftover funds, in FY '20, we would have had an ending balance of 200,000. So our goal was putting the spending freeze on so we could keep this 584 to help us next year, because next year we have to increase our circuit breaker. We've done that in the budget. I
Correct.
don't seem to have it.
That's okay.
I don't have
That's
it, no.
okay.
I'm sorry,
No.
because I had it. It's probably right on my desk,
That's all right.
or I'll find it the minute I put this book down.
The reason I was asking was worst-case scenario, if we had to end up using more circuit breaker than was budgeted, how much did we have to play with? Which I know we don't want to do because we're.
Right, we do have wiggle room there. We do
Okay.
have wiggle room. That's something I was looking at today when we were working on the updated budget. So we do have a little wiggle room.
Okay.
Our goal was to try not to do that, knowing that next year we would have to do that. But I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
I don't believe so.
And I'll make sure I get you that answer. I can email you that balance, because I had it on my fingertips. The next item on the agenda for me is update on public hearing. There is going to be a public hearing here on April 23rd at 7 o'clock. It has been posted online, it's been advertised in the T&G. I'm also having it put in the Webster Times, in the Stonebridge, and the Smart Shopper. I'm trying to get the word out there. So that'll be here, and we will be reviewing the budget at that point.
Do,
Go ahead.
do you think there's any need to potentially consider another venue for that meeting? We were discussing earlier, one year we had over 100 people in the Park Ave Auditorium. Last year we had 2. This room is fine if we have probably 15 to 20, I'm guessing, if we.
I think we could easily move if there were a lot of people, into the auditorium at the high school. We just would have to check to see if the
You
auditorium.
can't do that with the open meeting law.
Oh,
You have to post, that's why I'm asking, if the group thought there was any need to have a bigger venue.
I think we could manage it here.
yeah.
Okay.
We could set it up where, you know, if staff had to move, you know, to stand on the side so we can do the presentation and stuff, I think we
Okay.
could figure it out.
Perfect.
We'll make it work.
You
We'll
always
make
do.
it work. There certainly will be enough press out there. It'll be in all the local papers that we have, so it'd be nice to have some people here to ask some questions. And then the last item on my report is the grant application. I recently applied for Safe Schools and Community Grant. It was due on April 3rd. I worked with Chief Shaw and SRO Tim Whiting. This is a grant for safe schools. They are prioritizing it for, you get additional points in the grant for exterior doors and door locks with one single entry point, secure entry point. But the grant was for, it also allowed surveillance cameras, school site alarms, communication systems, so walkie systems, tourniquet and first aid, and active shooter detective systems. We are eligible for up to 60,000. It was based on your community size. We applied for surveillance cameras. As you know, the middle school has no internal cameras, and the cameras are 2005. They're outdated. The server is outdated there. So we look to upgrade that system, and we also applied for some cameras at Park Ave. Park Ave was built, and again, that has no interior cameras. So we are looking to add a few internal cameras and then some additional exterior cameras to cover more of the playground areas, entry points. Many of the cameras that were there were fixed cameras. So, you know, the angle of them isn't as robust as what we could have. So the plan would be to get some new cameras and then position the other cameras in areas that we could use them throughout the building, reuse them. So we are hoping to hear, it's a quick turnaround on the grant. We are hoping to hear on or about April 26th, whether or not we'll receive the grant. And if we do, that'll be something we look to install in June or July. So we are keeping our fingers crossed. As you know, this is how we started the cameras at the high school with the same grant years ago. The police department applied, and at that point, it was a matching grant. So we had to match the amount, but this is just a straight 60,000 for Safe Schools. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that. And I thank the chief and Mr. Whiting, Tim Whiting, for the help with applying for the grant. So fingers crossed. And if there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none.
you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Principal Report, Michael Zajac, Webster Middle School. Good evening,
evening.
Mr. Zajac.
Good evening. It's been busy. I didn't include the science fair on my list. That's coming up, the second, and now we can call it annual science fair. And then we have the math night coming up on the 30th of April. Boston Museum of Science, so the things that happen at any school is not just led by the principal, by a staff, a dedicated faculty. And I think as I look at this, with the science fair with Russ Holden and with the math night, which is being conducted by fifth grade teachers, Boston Museum of Science is another great idea. Eighth grade students, Dan Kelly and eighth grade teachers got a scholarship to bring all the eighth graders to the Boston Museum of Science. They got money for buses, and so there's a minimal cost to get the kids to Boston, and they were outstanding on their way. Washington DC, it's getting close. We have met with the students. We have 72 students, 27 chaperones. It's like a 3-to-1 ratio, so we're pretty good. And we're getting close. The students are excited, the faculty, the parents are excited. I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity, putting details together, picking on menus and talking in detail. So we do have a couple night events coming up. One is I will meet with the chaperones and go over the whole itinerary, their responsibilities, how do you get 72 kids off a bus on a highway to get food and get them back on the bus in less than a half an hour. It can be done. I've done it many times. So with that being said, going over those, what's going to happen at the hotel, what's going to happen at Arlington, the museums, you know, the whole flow. I've done this a few times. Last year I didn't go back, and I'm looking forward to going back. And I think our students are really excited for it. So it's going to be a wonderful event. We had an opera performance for fifth grade. Barry Baggett organized this event where they came in and performed for our fifth grade students. And again, it's everyone pulling together as a team, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It's the second year for that. School newsletter, first edition came out in April. Was put together. Stacy Tucker took the lead on that. She facilitated the gathering. She's also my Facebook expert. She does an incredible job. And she took the lead on that for me, and we put together our first newsletter, and we are getting ready for our next. So we'll be putting that together. MCAS assessment. Today was our first day. 560 students tested simultaneously. 54 testing locations throughout the building. It went off smoothly. It was really remarkable. You always expect your first day, so they figure an hour and a half for the test, and I'm figuring an hour and a half for problems, because you always wonder what's going to happen your first time you load 560 students on the network. it went beautifully. It really did. The teachers were well prepared, students were well prepared. Our staff has been showing them all the different tools on the MCAS. What I can say to you is, 2 hours in, 196 students were still working. That was remarkable. So I was sitting there on my computer and I was walking around with it, tracking how the test was going and then seeing our numbers, because I had to move lunch off to make, how many kids are still testing, how does it interfere lunch, everything else. And with the half an hour to go, we still had 95 students testing. So we about 10, 15. So they really took it seriously. They did a wonderful job. So I'm really excited. And we have a pep rally on Friday. We've gotten into a trend here that before a holiday break or break in the school, the phys ed staff have come to me and said, we'd like to put on a pep rally. And it's wonderful. We have activities and games and the kids come in. It's always wonderful to get them all fired up and then send them home for the weekend, for the week. So it's in the afternoon, so they'll be done at 2:10 and ready to go home for the week. But it's a lot going on. It's an exciting time. That's it.
Any questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Zajac? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on with the agenda, the next item on the agenda is the student update. Unfortunately, Mariah had a personal commitment that she had a conflict this evening and was unable to join us, so we will skip over that agenda item. Moving on to next item, which is old business. First item under old business is monthly report on fundraising applications. Again, I say this every month. This is per school committee policy. School committee members or the school committee as an entity does not approve any fundraising applications. Those are approved by the building principal and the superintendent. We report on those so the public knows what's going on, and also they are posted on the district website. So in this past month, the Bartlett Student Council had a Kiss a Senior Goodbye fundraiser. I'm sure the seniors are thrilled that they're getting close to their graduation date. The DECA Club is having a fundraiser at Thompson Speedway to raise some money for Tyler's trip to Florida. Class of 2022, we're selling pretzel rods. Bartlett Drama Club selling, looks like flowers, having a flower sale. Class of 2022 had a car wash, or will be having a car wash at AutoZone. The Black Empowerment Student Union Club, as I think Mrs. Gogan mentioned, is having a lip sync contest, or had a lip sync contest.
No, having this week.
Oh, they changed the
Oh, they
date.
changed the
Sorry
date.
about that. And the National Junior Honor Society is selling St. Patrick's Day carnations. So again, thank you to our staff and all the community members who support our children and us parents who do it through guilt, through all of the fundraisers that go on during the year. Next item on the agenda is everybody's favorite topic of the season, the FY20 budget update. Mrs. Gogan and/or Mrs. Perangeli.
We have been working to take a closer look at our budget. As you know, the town has allocated 3% in their budget that they want to bring forward. We did have a meeting. Chairman Hertman, you and I were at that meeting before we had the tri-committee meeting, and we talked about the goals of Webster Public Schools and the importance of keeping us moving forward. We've had, I think, some very good conversations about how we're using our funds to accomplish our goals. As you can see in our budget, we are trying to put the resources into the hands of the teachers and really focus on children. So in front of you, you have a little cheat sheet. We figured this would be the best way. And tonight, we'd like to present to you actually two budgets, a 3.2 and a 3. For the very reason that I mentioned in my report. If we do not receive any additional funds, we have been allocated 3% from the town. If we receive additional funds, last night the committee has agreed to give us what we need to have a 3.2 budget. And then if we receive funds on top of that, they would like to have a 70-30 split. So I'm going to go down the list of this significant changes. Actually, Park Avenue School, in the 3.2 budget, will still be receiving a grade 3 teacher. As we have discussed, the numbers are high in that classroom. We still are requesting an additional adjustment counselor for over 800 students. In the 3.2 budget, there will be a reduction of a .2 librarian. In the 3.2 budget, there is a reduction of a special education teacher and reduction of some of the principal's supplies. And we had proposed adding a .5 custodian. And in the 3.2 budget, we are looking at having those funds come from our before and after school account, not the LEA budget. And we are also proposing, and then if you look at the next column, the 3 budget, I'll just do 3 and then 3 point, stay with Park Ave, so it kind of makes sense. Is that a good system? Okay. So for Park Ave for 3, it would be everything that I just said in the 3.2, but we would be reducing the overtime for custodians by $2,500. With the additional staff, the additional .5, we feel that there may not be a need for overtime. So that would be Park Avenue Elementary School in the 3.2 and then the 3. For the Webster Middle School, we have in the 3.2 budget, we would like to have a full-time dean. We had the .4 adjustment counselor. We would be moving that counselor from contracted services over to the middle school, and .4 would come from the LEA budget, and .6 would not. So we are also, it has been proposed to reduce a para-professional, and we would like to add a .5 custodian in the 3.2. Again, the difference between the 3.2 and the 3 for the middle school is that we would reduce overtime for the custodian by $2,500, again, with an additional .5 custodian. We feel that we could easily do that, the difference between the 3.2 and the 3. Are you following me? Okay.
I think.
Yes? Yes? Okay. And Bartlett High School. There's been a lot of talk about safety and low morale and concerns. And I will have to say that some of the things that have been done at the high school are not getting done because what I'm hearing is discipline's getting in the way. Given the feedback that I have, given the meetings that we've had in the last 2 weeks, we are recommending a full-time dean at the high school. And we are, again, with reducing a special education teacher. That is an attrition position that's already been reduced this year. We would be reducing some of the requests for music supplies, not all of them, but some of them. There would be a reduction in .5 foreign language, and that is the 3.2 version of the high school. The 3 version of the high school would include everything that I just said, and again, the reduction of custodial overtime to the tune of $2,500, and then reducing heating by $10,000. Do you want to speak about that heating?
Yeah, I went back, I did a projection over the past, well, I looked back, not a projection, I looked back over the past 3 years and looked forward to where we are now, where I think we'll be next year. And we've been safely hovering around the same amount every year. So I'm confident that we could cut 10,000 from the budget and be okay there.
Under special education, last year, we did not touch school choice money. In the proposed 4.2, we were looking at $100,000 for technology and $50,000 towards the ABAs. In the 3.2 budget, we're proposing to access $200,000, 100 for ABA paraprofessionals and 100 for technology. And that goes as well for the 3-point budget. For the district offices, we had proposed an additional .5 administrative assistant to assist in the central office. That is in the 3.2 budget, and it is not in the 3. The ELL coordinator is a very part-time position in the 3.2. We were looking at something like a 2 FTE, and we were looking at both using, I think, maybe $10,000 from the LEA and then using grant funds for that, splitting that .2 position. We have proposed in the 3.2, we would have to reduce curriculum, and in the 3, we would have to reduce the amount of money by about $9,000 in both the 3 and the 3.2. And we, as you know, have just hired a school community liaison. In the 3 and the 3.2, we would be looking at accessing only $10,000 from the school LEA funds, but again, looking at grants funds and having that position emerge as we see fit. And then reducing legal. We would be reducing legal in the 3 by $5,000.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I did find, I knew I had it. I knew I had it. So you're looking for a balance to carry over at the end of this year without dipping into additional circuit breaker. We'd be carrying over a balance of 423.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we would have next year.
Right.
And then if you're interested in school choice, as the superintendent said last year, we were fortunate enough not to access any of that money. We had a very good year, so by doubling that, that would leave us a balance in that account of approximately $459,000.
Before the 200?
After.
And if you have all of your balances in front of you, one of my questions was going to see what's the before and after school balance, because you're using funds from that.
$177,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
That's
questions?
before the 25.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we understand a little better about the $9,000 reduction in curriculum costs? We've been really on a good wave of enhancing our curriculum over the last year or two. So what would that look like?
It wouldn't deter us from the solid tracks with ELA that we're on. We may not be able to do everything that we wanted to do with social studies and science. We had to look at that account in order to make these budgets work. We don't have it specifically outlined where we would take that from, but it certainly wouldn't be the consumables in the classroom. It might be those extra items that we were looking at, like science and social studies.
What do you mean by extra items like science and social?
Well, science and social studies is on the curriculum renewal map. And I know that we are starting a social studies group to look at resources. So it may impact those kind of resources, but it wouldn't impact the ELA or the math program. So we have a lump sum. Curriculum has gone from, I think, 90 to 109. Let me just get my... And that money was allocated for reading and math consumables and some STEM scopes. But we are hearing from the teachers that they're feeling a little overwhelmed with some of the curriculum initiatives. So the $9,000 would not stop our progress in any way, but it may slow us down, and I would say specifically in science and social studies. I just want to give you the exact numbers where the increases were. So we had $75,000 this year, and we've increased it to $109,000.
And then it would be reduced then to 100,000?
Right.
Right.
So it's still an increase for us.
Mhm. Sure.
And we would have to do, a priority list.
Just another question, if
Yes.
you don't mind.
Yep.
I mean, first of all, I should have probably started with a thank you for all the work that's gone into the budget and the creativity that is involved in trying to make this work in an impossible situation. So, but just another question related to the custodial overtime. I know I asked about that before, and it sounds like that has to do with snow removal and things like that. But it would seem like regardless of what budget we end up passing in the long run, that's something that should be reduced, right? I mean, if we're able to add a custodian, the need for that overtime should be gone.
I don't disagree. It was actually something that I was working on, a little light bulb went off in my head today on the 3.0, and I said, wait a minute, I can reduce some of this custodial OT with the additional services now. I'm not gonna be pulling in people. There still will be times where I'll have to pull, because depending on the coverage. So if I have to, and it will be a little easier with another half a guy, because the way it's worked now is if I have to call somebody, if somebody's out, or somebody during the day is out, I have to call in the night guy to come in early to cover that, which only leaves me half a custodian at night. So if there's something going on in the building, I have to shift or give somebody overtime to get that coverage. Hopefully, I'll be able to manage that a little bit better, having two full-time night guys. So I do think that I could work on reducing in the 3.2, maybe putting some of that curriculum money back and reducing the custodial overtime. Because it wasn't until later this afternoon that I realized it kind of, a light bulb went off, and I said, well, I don't need to keep all this custodial overtime. That's an area that I have some wiggle room in. So I could certainly make that adjustment.
Okay,
If
yeah, that'd
that's
be good,
something
even
the
in the
school-
4.2, I think, right? I mean, if we're adding the position, regardless of where we land with our budget,
Mhm.
right?
Yep,
Is
we
that
can move that
something-
around. Yeah,
That would be
I
good.
agree. I don't disagree with you. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Let me just first thank again my colleagues as well as the two of you for attending the meeting last night. Unfortunately, my flight was delayed about 3 hours, so I was unable to, I didn't think I was going to get there anyways. And certainly, I think you expressed this last night, Mrs. Gogan. We as a committee, I believe, will always try to get what we think we need, but certainly will always work in conjunction with what the town can afford. And, I understand Mr. Becker's motion, and I appreciate it, and the vote of the board, and I believe certainly we will be all on the same page. I do have a couple questions. Why would we, and this is not putting down custodians whatsoever, but why would we cut a teacher, if necessary, in the special ed teacher that was requested at Park Ave and keep the additional 1.0 custodian shared by Park Ave in the middle school?
I can answer that. The reduction of the special education teacher was put on the table by the principal. So in relooking at scheduling and needs, so it's not something that they're requesting.
Okay.
Okay, so some of these, many of these suggestions have come from building principals, and looking at refining their schedules, looking at, reworking things. So as you can recall, we put that additional special education teacher in last year's budget with a different principal. A new principal has come in and is looking at the model and working with our Director of Student Services, and this is something that has come from that building. So we wouldn't, what I believe we've done really well at through this budget season is working together as a team to prioritize needs and think creatively about how to be more efficient and effective. And that really is tasking us to look at what everybody's doing in their roles and responsibilities and case numbers and caseloads. And so things have been refined, even from the 4.2 to the 3.2 to today. We're constantly thinking about how we can be efficient and effective. And that's where the overtime for the custodian light bulb went off. And I think that's what happens with budgeting. You're always kind of thinking about needs. From our 4.2 to our 3.2, we've got an influx of conversation going around school safety right now. We did not have that influx of conversation when we produced the budget at 4.2 and when we sat in this room from December to January to February to March. There was not a push for a dean at the high school. So, we are actively listening, we're responding, we're trying to create the support systems and structures so that this school district can move forward. In 3 months from now, we may be looking at, okay, well, we thought this was going to work, and we'll be bringing that back to you. We're trying to be as transparent as possible, and I do think it's very important to note that our job is to advocate for what we need. We did advocate for what we need last night. We also understand that our community really supports us, and that partnership means a lot to us. And so we decided today that we were going to bring 2 budgets, better so that you can see them both. Of course we would like the 3.2. Of course we'd like the 4.2. But we want to be effective in our teamwork with the community. And I have to say there's bits and pieces of this budget as we go along that I like better than the 4.2 because we've discovered different things. And that discovery only happens when you're constantly looking at it. And I want to give kudos to Monique and our team. We are constantly looking at what's working, what's not working, how can we fix it? And if you're not having those conversations about how can we fix it, you don't get to this. So it is.
I also wanted to point out, even at our finance committee meeting last night, they were pleased to see the 0.5 additional custodians in there, especially at Park Ave. We just don't have the manpower. We've got this beautiful new building. It's huge. And, the community invested in that. And one of the finance committee members lives close by, and he understands with the amount of custodians we have, they just don't have the time to get outside, to tend to the grounds, to take care of the inside of the building, to keep the building clean. So he was actually very pleased that we were adding custodial services over there to hopefully help, keep the outside of the building up and keep it looking nice. They take a lot of pride. We take a lot of pride in our building. We spent a lot of money in our building. We need to take care of our building and our grounds. So, and, that's one, even Ms. Parmley says, when she walks in, she wants it to be the shining star for every parent and student that walks in. And it's frustrating when you go through and you see maybe dirty hallways or dirty stairwells or maybe a classroom that hasn't been mopped for a couple days, when you have all these little kids sitting on the floor and germs. So I think, there was a lot of thought and conversation around this position as we were putting it in, trying to prioritize.
And please, I don't question that. It's just on paper, and that's why I actually
Yeah.
asked the question
It's a
in case
great
someone was
question.
listening.
Yep.
If you think just without the explanation, wait a minute, gonna cut a teacher, but, and trust me, I'm not putting
Yep.
any, sitting on a few years of the school building committee,
Yeah.
I would hope that we keep that building as clean as we possibly can. The other question or comment, I guess, and this is where I probably won't be the most popular kid in the class, was the dean of students. And let me just say publicly, this is not putting down your predecessors who have sat in that chair. But the private conversations that I've had with you, you have by far the most focused and adamant on ensuring that our students and staff are as safe as they possibly can. So I just want to state that publicly. What at times bothers me, and I'm just venting for a moment, is, this topic of discipline and behavior and school safety has been going on, in my experience, for over 10 years. This was actually, I think I might have shared the reason why I got involved in working with administrators. And The only concern I have, and that's, I as a member, and I fully believe this committee as a whole would always do what you and your team recommend, is to be what is necessary to ensure, A, a safe environment, and B, to achieve the highest level of learning. What I do get concerned about at times is we have added a lot of money into our budget over the last 4 years. Most of that money, not all, but a significant portion, has gone to this issue of hiring administrators, hiring social adjustment counselors, hiring STAR teachers, paras, et cetera, and they may well be needed. But what I am concerned about, I look at the list you gave out a couple meetings ago, and this was the list of almost all of the school districts in southern Worcester County. And just quickly going through it, there are 11 schools in southern Worcester County that have more students, some significantly more than the middle school and the high school, and they have 2 administrators. So that says to me one of 3 things. Either A, our population is that much more challenging. I understand clearly that our population at times can be very challenging. B, the programs that they have in place to deal with their behavior and discipline issues are more effective than ours. Or C, the staff involved, administrators, guidance counselors, et cetera, are more effective in managing the programs that have been implemented. I don't know what the answer is regarding those 3 buckets. I'm guessing probably it's a combination of all 3. But I do get concerned, and I know your team was working on it, and there's a lot going on when I had asked several meetings ago about taking a look at programming. Just throwing new positions at a problem without, for lack of a better phrase, doing a root cause analysis and determining, is it a staffing issue? Is it a program issue? Is it a performance issue? How do we fix this? Because it continues to happen year after year.
I believe I have stated that throwing a person at a problem is not the solution. I've been in education for a long time, and I've worked in a lot of different school districts, and kids are kids, and their behaviors are similar, but we are servicing a high number of special needs children. Our special needs numbers are probably higher than our surrounding districts. We have some very challenging behaviors in our schools, and I do not think that we have the right programs for some of our kids. Having said that, that doesn't mean that we can't build them. Having 400 kids and 3 administrators is unusual. I'll be the first one to tell you that. But right now at Bartlett High School, some of the basic things, such as attendance and programs of studies, are not getting done because I'm being told discipline's in the way. So when I mentioned in my report that I'm putting some different structures in place, we are putting some different structures in place, which we will be doing at the middle school as well, to look at data, collect valid data, have the 3 administrators in their positions, but have clearly defined roles on what people are doing, and go from there. What I am hearing is that the discipline is interfering with learning. It's interfering with staff feeling safe. It's interfering with kids making progress. I feel strongly at this point that I need to advocate for the dean at the high school. And that's 360 for me. Now, having said that, I think when proper structures and programming, and it's a combination of everything. It's not just a program. It's not just a 3rd administrator. It's tiered 2 supports for children. What happened to PBIS? Where is it? Where is that at the high school? Those things have fallen off the radar. being told that it's impossible to get them back on the radar with 2 administrators. So it's a budget for 1 year. At this point, I am going to advocate for that because things have to be put back in place. I know at the middle school, we are also having significant issues with students' behavior. And I have tasked Mr. Zajac to begin to work with myself and Mrs. Barris on maybe we need a Quest program at the middle school. Because when students get in trouble and then they go back into a classroom and they repeat that cycle and they're not learning, we're not helping those children at all. And we're actually deterring the community from learning. And we need to fix that. So I don't have a pixie dust one-line answer, but there are some issues going on that we need to address. Having worked with the curriculum office very closely, I know that this district has spent a lot of money on social emotional training, on PBIS. Well, the thing is, you can spend money on the training, it has to be implemented. And that's not one person, that's a community. That's every teacher, that's every administrator, that's getting parents involved and having clear expectations. And I'm going to be a little bit more involved. I need to be a little bit more involved to figure out what's going on.
And again, I will always support what's in the best interest of children. It's just, the fiduciary side of me,
Yep.
which not saying you guys aren't
Yep.
that way as well, but that's when I get a little concerned. Any other questions or comments from the members? So the plan would be to obviously, at our next meeting, not only hold the public hearing, but to present and vote on a final budget that is presented in conjunction with the town administrator's budget at town meeting. So that,
So, through the chair, would you like the 3% budget? Is that what you're recommending?
well, the chair doesn't make any recommendations as an individual. I would open it up to the members to voice their opinions with regards, that's a valid point, with some direction as far as where we as a committee most likely would end up voting on a final budget to be presented at town meeting.
Just for your information, we did, at our board meeting last night, we did have the discussion about, the importance for our district to move forward. Part of the reason is our 3.2 is we've received $660,000 in Chapter 70. That is pretty much a 3.2 budget. So with the town cutting us down to a 3% budget, we are receiving a little less, about $40,000 less of our Chapter 70 money, which is why they agreed that if there are any changes in revenue, whether it be Chapter 70 or on the town side, that the school department would get the additional $40,000 to bring us back to a 3.2, and then there would be a split after that. But I just wanted you to understand the full picture as to where we're at on the revenue side of things with Chapter 70 money coming in. I am hopeful that we will see additional Chapter 70 money. There's another version of the budget coming out on April 10th, I believe.
Yes.
And we will be looking at that closely. Again, nothing's set in stone until the budget's approved at the state level, but it is something that we are monitoring. I think we feel pretty comfortable with the versions that we presented tonight.
I would just advise the board that we want to work collaboratively with our community. We don't want to go into town meeting in an adversarial way. That's not a win-win for anybody. And we are very grateful for their ongoing support.
And I agree, again, just, Mr. Shinneberg.
Mr. Chair. No, I was just going to say, and Ms. Perangeli kind of touched on everything that I was going to try to say, probably not as eloquently, that, you know, I have full confidence that that the additional funds will come in as well. So I would recommend, you know, moving forward with the 3.0 at this time.
Are there any other members who would like to express their opinion? Mrs. Siddiqui?
Yes, I'm ready to express, you can tell, right? So just a couple things. I wonder, you know, it looks like the difference between the 3.2 and the 3, the reduction in custodial overtime we've established, we can likely do that. So I wonder, so we've got that at Park Avenue and at Webster Middle School, and then the reduction in the heating and the custodial overtime. It looks like those things, and then the halftime admin assistant at the district offices is the difference. And I wonder if the elimination of those things would enable us to have that halftime admin. Does that make sense?
For the 3, in the 3.0, that's everything that we've done.
Okay. That would be
That's
at the
included in the
3.2.
3.0. Right, so
Right.
that would be the 3.2. If we were to get the additional funds, then we would prioritize from the 3 to the 3.2 what we want to reinstate. Now, if we wanted to move monies around, like you said, in the 3.2, I didn't reflect that overtime reduction. I certainly can, so that could apply to somewhere else.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
And
And
we-
seems like that's where we're gonna end up.
Yep, and what we would probably do is just prioritize and come up with a list
Yep.
of what's going to be restored in the 3.2.
Yep. Great.
So again, unless any of or all of the other members object, I believe it would be to present the 3.0
Okay,
as part of the public hearing.
okay.
Any other questions or comments related to the budget? Hearing none, next item is new business, which there is none this meeting, and I just realized that we inadvertently left off review of signing bills on the agenda. So we will have to individually sign the warrant and payroll outside of the open meeting, either following this meeting or at some point this week. With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.